September 7th, 1904, Volume 6. Attention on not committing sin makes up for the sorrow for sin. I was concerned because I had read in a book that the reason for so many frustrated vocations is the lack of incessant sorrow for sin. And since I do not think about this, but I only think of blessed Jesus and of how to have him come, and I occupy myself with nothing else, I thought to myself of what a bad state I was in. Then, as I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, attention on not committing sin makes up for the sorrow. And even if one were sorry, but in spite of this he committed sins, his sorrow would be vain and fruitless. On the other hand, a continuous attention on not committing sins not only takes the place of sorrow, but pushes grace continuously to help the soul, in a special way, not to fall into sin. And it maintains the soul always purged. Therefore continue to be attentive on not offending me even slightly, for this will make up for all the rest." September 7th, 1908, Volume 8. The more things of which the soul deprives herself down here, the more she will have up there in heaven. As I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, the more things of which the soul deprives herself down here, the more she will have up there in heaven. So the poorer on earth, the richer in heaven. The more she is deprived of tastes, pleasures, amusements, trips, strolls on earth, the more tastes and pleasures she will have in God. Oh, how she will stroll in the expanse of the heavens, especially in the immeasurable heavens of the attributes of God. In fact, each attribute is one more heaven, one more paradise. And among the blessed, some enter into them as though at the margin of the attributes of God. Some walk in the middle of them, some even higher. And the more they walk, the more they taste, enjoy, and amuse themselves. So, one who leaves the earth takes heaven, be it even in the smallest thing. Therefore, it follows that the more one is despised, the more he is honored. The smaller, the greater. The more submitted, the more dominant. And so with all the rest. Yet of the mortals, who thinks of depriving himself of something on earth to have it eternally in heaven? Almost no one. September 7th, 1926, Volume 19. How God has his throne, his royal palace, his stable, and fixed dwelling. The divine will is sun, the human will is a spark formed by the tip of the rays of the supreme volition. I was about to resume my flight in the supreme volition, to make my usual visit in the kingdom of the divine will, and to extend myself within its boundaries, in order to let my I love you, my adoration, my thank you, echo for each created thing. Now, as I was about to do this, I thought to myself, if God is everywhere, why take flight in the divine volition to go up to the height of the heavens, before the Supreme Majesty, as though carrying all human wills of the generations on my little lap, to do my act of subjection, of love, and of abandonment for each rebellious will, in order to conquer the divine will to come and reign upon earth, dominating and triumphant in the midst of creatures? Since it is everywhere, I can also do it from here." While I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus moving in my interior told me, "My daughter, look at the sun. Its light descends and fills the whole earth, but the sun remains always up there, under the vault of the heavens, with all majesty in its sphere, lording and dominating over everyone and everything with its light. But even though it does not descend down below, it gives the same effects. It communicates the same goods by means of its rays, as if it itself would descend from the height of its sphere. More so because, if the sun descended from its height, since the earth is much smaller and creatures are incapable of sustaining a light so great, in descending it would ignite and eclipse everything with its light and with its heat. But since all things created by me contain the similarity with the bosom of mercy of their Creator, the sun remains up there, emitting its rays full of goodness, of love, and of goods for the little earth. Now, if the sun does this, image of the true light of the divine sun, much more so does God, true Son of light, of justice, and of love. My majesty does not move from the height of its throne, but it is always firm and stable in its place, in its celestial royal palace. More than sun, it emits its endless rays, which carry its effects, its goods, and communicates its very life, as if it itself would descend to those who want to receive it. So, what it does not do by descending in person, it does through the emanation of its endless rays, by locating in them to give its very life and its goods to the human generations. Now, my daughter, because of your condition as creature, and because of your office of the mission of the Supreme Fiat, it is your duty to go up on those very rays that the Supreme Majesty emits, to bring yourself before it, and fulfill your office in the bosom of the Eternal Sun, plunging into the origin from which you came, in order to take the fullness of my will as much as is possible for creature, to know it and to manifest it to others. Now you must know what bonds of identification exist between the divine will and the human will, and therefore why I so much love and want, by right of creation, of paternity, of love, and of justice, that the human will would surrender its place to mine, and throwing itself into its arms like a little child, would let itself be held, nourished, and dominated by it. In creating man, the Supreme Being placed my will out into the field, although all of our attributes concurred with it as a consequence and naturally. But the Supreme Volition was the primary act by which it took to heart the life of all creation, including man, therefore making itself the life of all, dominating everything, making everything its own. Since everything had come out of it, by justice everything was to be its own. More than sun, my will emitted its rays, and with the tips of these rays, animating the human nature, it formed the will in the creature. Do you see, then, what the will is in the human generations? Many different tips of rays, which were like sparks in creatures, to form the will in them, but without detaching these sparks from the ray unleashed by the center of the sun of the Supreme Volition. So all human generations turn around this sun, because each creature contains the tip of one ray of this eternal sun of my will. Now, what is not the affront for this sun, to see the circumference of these rays, whose tips formed the will of each creature, converted, transmuted into darkness, into human nature, denying the light, the dominion, and the life of that sun which gave its will with so much love, so that its will and those of creatures might be one, and so it might be able to form divine life in them. Can there be a stronger, more stable and inseparable bond than the one between the center of the sun and its rays? Light is indivisible, and if it could be separated, the detached part would go wandering and would end up turning into darkness. So there is such union of identification between the divine will and the human, as to be comparable to the union that exists between the sun and the solar ray, between heat and light. Would it not be a right of the sun to dominate its rays and to receive their subjection, so as to form its kingdom of light over its very solar circumference? So it is for my will. When the creature withdraws from it, it remains as though without kingdom, without dominion, without subjects. It feels itself being robbed of that which is its own. Each act which does not depend upon its volition is a tearing, a theft made against its light. And in seeing itself being robbed of its light, converted into darkness, it agonizes more than a mother who sees the fruit of her womb being snatched away from her, not to give him life, but to kill him. So the losses that my will suffers when the creature is not united to its center and does not live of the volition of its light are divine losses and of infinite value. The evils for creatures, the ugliness they acquire, are incalculable and indescribable. My will remains without kingdom in the creatures, and they remain stripped, without inheritance, with no right to any good whatsoever. Therefore there is nothing more important, nothing greater, which will establish the balance, the order, the harmony, the likeness between creator and creature, than my will. This is why I want to make known what the divine will and the human will are, so that we may reconcile, and my will may acquire its kingdom, and creatures may be given back all the goods they lost. September 7th, 1931, Volume 29. Roll call of all the works come out of the Fiat. The palpitating life of the creature in it. Protections, speaking voice, assailers. My poor mind, going around in the acts done by the divine will, keeps tracing everything that it has done, in order to recognize them, love them, appreciate them, and then offer them as the most beautiful homage to the same divine will as fruits worthy of its works. But while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, how pleasing it is to my heart, and how sweet it sounds to my hearing, your tracing everything that my divine will has done, in order to recognize it, love it, and give it to us as the most beautiful homage of the love that we had for creatures, in creating so many things for love of them. By tracing them, your soul rings the bell, to as though roll call all the works come out of the divine Fiat, so as to say to us, how many beautiful things you have created for me, to give them back to me as gifts and pledges of your love. And I, making them my own, give them back to you as gifts and pledges of my love for you." So we feel the palpitating life of the creature in our works, her little love flowing within ours, and the purpose of creation realized. To know our works and the purpose for which they were made is the point of support of the creature, in which she finds a divine will in her power, and it is our pretext for giving her other surprises of new gifts and graces. And I, my love, a thought afflicts me. I fear I may lack the continuation of my acts in your divine will, and as I would interrupt the sound of my bell, you, offended by me, might put me aside, and will not give me any more grace to make me live in your will. And Jesus added, "My daughter, do not fear. You must know that one step gives life to another step. One good is life in support of another good. One act calls to life another act. And even evil, sin, is life of other evils and of other sins. Things never remain isolated, but almost always have their succession. Good is like the seed that possesses the generative virtue. As long as one has the patience to sow it in the bosom of the earth, it will produce 10, 20 times as much. The same for the creature. If she has patience and remains attentive to enclose in her soul the seed of the good that she has done, she will have the generation, the multiplicity, 100-fold of the good acts that she has done. And if you knew what it means to do a good act, each act is a protection that she acquires, and a voice speaking before our throne of the one who has done a good. For each additional act of good, so many more defenders does the creature have for her defense. And if the circumstances of life cause her to find herself in such constraints and trials that it seems that she might want to vacillate and fall, the good acts that she has done take on the appearance of assailers, and they assail us, so that the one who has loved us and has had a succession of many good acts may not vacillate. And they run around the creature as supporters, that she may not give up in the trial. And suppose that there had been a sequence of acts done in our will. Oh, then in each act there is a divine value and virtue defending the creature. We see in each of her acts our will as though engaged. Therefore we ourselves make ourselves defenders and supporters of she who has given life in her acts to our divine fiat. Can we perhaps deny anything to ourselves, or disregard our will operating in the creature? No, no. Therefore do not fear, but rather abandon yourself like a little newborn in our arms, that you may feel our support and the protection of your very acts. Do you think that a repeated, continued good is nothing? They are divine properties that one acquires. They are armies that are formed, that make one conquer the celestial fatherland. It happens to one who has continued many good acts as to someone who has acquired many properties. If he has a setback, it won't be able to do him much harm, because the many properties will fill the void of the setback that he suffered. But if someone else has acquired little or possesses nothing, a little setback is enough to leave him destitute of the most squalid misery. Such is to do much good or little or nothing. This is why I always repeat to you, be attentive, be faithful to me, and let your flight in my will be continuous. After this he added, My daughter, you must know that when you keep disposing yourself to do your acts in my divine will, my will remains conceived in your act, and as you do it, you give it the field to form its life in the act that you do. Not only this, your new acts serve as nourishment to those already done. In fact, since my divine will is life, once it has been enclosed in the acts of the creature, it feels the need of air, of breath, of heartbeat, of nourishment. Here is the necessity of the new acts, because these serve to maintain its divine air, its continuous breathing, its uninterrupted heartbeat, and the nourishment in order to grow my very will in the creature. See, then, the great necessity of the continuation of the acts, in order to let it live and reign in the creature. Otherwise my will would be uncomfortable without its full triumph in all her acts. End of September 7th. Fiat.